So we are now live with our cleaning up your gradebook for spring. So before everybody joined, I was speaking with Jennifer about a few things that she may be interested in really getting out of this, and I would love to hear that from the rest of you. If you have something specific that you really want me to kind of make sure I cover, then please feel free to share that with us. So on that note, I know some of the things that Jennifer's talking about is make sure we cover bonus items, the difference in weighted and the percentage-based and points-based grades. So, of course, we're definitely going to cover those things. Any other input before we get started?
I don't have anything.
Nothing, huh? All right.
Sorry.
It's all right. No problem. You don't have to bring anything. How about you, Angela? I'm going to have to come see you, Angela, and fix your microphone for you. It seems like your microphone, I think go go ahead and throw something in the chat if you don't mind, because your mic is not coming across very well. It's hard to understand you. So sorry. How about you, Stacy?
No,
Nothing? Okay,
nothing.
no problem. So a few of the things I want to talk about, obviously, I'm going to go through like 2 PowerPoints. So I just kind of get to know what we're going to talk about, then we're going to get right into course 10 and look at it. So most of you, or many of you, may or may not already know there's some different ways you can grade inside of course 10. So you have the option of doing weighted. You have the option to do a points grading system. There's even a formula-based thing, but I'm not going to get real into that because, frankly, it's only used by about one person that I've ever talked to in the last several years. We've used Desire to Learn, and I don't think it's usually an effective way to grade. So anyway, but I'll talk about kind of what it is, just so you know. And as you may already know as well, usually before you dive into your whole gradebook scheme and setting it up in course 10, you really need to set it up in your syllabus and make sure you know how you want to grade. So surprising, perhaps, that's not something we often do ahead of time. so again, before you really get into what we're doing today, hopefully you have already kind of set up your grading scheme and you really know what you want to do. There's a ton of websites out there actually that have some pretty good ideas for good ways to grade and good ways to set up a grading scheme in your class if that's useful to anybody. But there's a lot of those kind of already out there. So you have to ask yourself, like, again, points over a percentage. Do you want to drop lowest grade? Some of these things used to be a lot harder, or at least they are in different learning management systems. But in my opinion, some of these actually are fairly easy to do. For instance, the dropping the lowest grade, that was really difficult back in the WebCT days. You had to create a formula to do it, but you can do it pretty much automatically now. Angel says, I have a few discussions I have in the gradebook that were canceled. I need to remove these from the gradebook. But the discussions are weighted. Okay, no problem. Yeah, we can walk through that. So how you get rid of some of the stuff and how to untie it from your gradebook. That's not a problem. We can cover that, Angela. The other thing I want to look at too is the display option. So we get questions oftentimes as far as what do my students see and do they see what I see? So there's a few things I'll cover just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, so that your students see what you want them to see and you know what they're seeing. So there's some fairly easy ways to walk through that and walk through categories and just setting stuff up. So without bouncing the rest of these slides, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my course 10 class, and I just have a sandbox class. So pop that in here. So I'm in my sandbox, and I've already in my grades area. So again, from grades, go to your grades, and I'm in the manage grades area. So because this is just a sandbox, I can kind of play with it and I can break things, and I'm not worried about hurting anything. So let's start right here. The first thing that I would recommend doing is actually, once you have your gradebook set up in your head or on paper or whatever somewhere, even before the semester starts, if that's a possibility, is coming through and setting up your gradebook. So creating your gradebook categories, your items, walk through the whole thing. So there's something called the setup wizard in the gradebook. You may have already seen it, maybe not. But in the gradebook, I'm going to click on setup wizard. I'm going to let this kind of walk me through all of the settings, the properties that are possible, and then I can get a better idea, kind of just a quick setup for everything. So I'll just walk through it and explain a few things. And please interject if you have questions. I have no problem with that. So I'm just going to say start. So here's where it talks about weighted points or formula. So just to kind of clarify, actually, before I even mention that, these little question marks right here that you'll see, and you're going to see these throughout the system, not just in the grading area, they actually can give you some fairly good information. So if you're not sure what something does and there's a little question mark next to it, just click on it, and it's very likely it'll help you kind of understand what it's talking about. There are some things that are a little confusing. You probably already know that. So the weighted item, obviously, it's basically that up to 100%, and depending on how you have your grading scheme set up in your syllabus, this may be the option for you, or points. So these are the two main ways that we at UWG Online usually work with people as far as how they're set up. This bottom one, the formula option, so just to kind of show you what it is or explain what it does, you have to manually go in and create the formulas for what you want it to do. So if you really have some crazy high-tech thing and you really just want to make formulas, you can certainly do that. But 99% of the time, it's unnecessary. Normally, you can do what you want to do by utilizing categories inside of the weighted or the points areas to do those things and to make the calculations needed. So for mine, I'm going to go with weighted. And I'm going to click continue. And this final grade piece is just letting you choose what you want to release to your students. So either I can let the system decide for me, so based on math alone, it'll calculate the grade and that's what the students get. If I allow for that bag of chocolate at the end of the semester, I mean, not that, that'd be bad. If I allow myself to go back and review things and make that really hard decision, and I want to adjust them a little bit, I can certainly do that. And then I can just release that adjusted grade. So I'll leave it as adjusted, but again, that's up to you. Go with next one. So this piece, it's more important than it seems. So this grade calculations, you have the option of dropping an ungraded item or treating it as a 0. And notice the bottom one. By default, I don't believe this is actually selected, is this auto update. So I've already kind of played with this one before since it's just my sandbox. But I'm automatically going to keep that final grade updated. So this is where these two pieces come in, the drop ungraded or treat ungraded as 0. So if I want to keep the final grade updated and kind of pre-release it so my students have this running total of their final grade, I may want to actually drop the ungraded items. Because if I don't, they're going to look at their gradebook and think, I'm doing awful in this class. They're going to start with an F and work their way up to a good grade. Or they can see kind of where they're actually at that particular moment in time. So depending again on what you select. Then you can always come back and modify these after. So you can get to all of these settings just by going to the settings area up here anytime, even not as part of the wizard. So I'm going to leave these settings here. So I'm going to drop ungraded items and I'm going to automatically keep them updated. And I'll say continue. And gradebook schemes. We'll get into this a little bit. They're not used heavily, but I'll certainly answer any questions and get into this some. I've created a scheme. That's my new fun scheme. So I can preview it over here. So I made the oops, try harder, go you. So there's my my fun scheme. So normally what you do with a scheme, that's your kind of your letter grade scheme or that kind of thing is what you may want to create a scheme for. So that's normally what that's used for. So I'm going to say continue. Some of these are, again, a little bit silly perhaps. This is one of those no big deals. Doesn't require an explanation. So I'm going to say continue. And the display options. So the display options actually can cause you grief sometimes because what happens is there's two different areas for that. There's the student display options and the org display options. Org is CourseDen's lovely way, Brightspace's lovely way to tell you the class's display options for your students, for you or for your students. So anyway, they use lovely words like org unit. It's like you're part of Star Wars or something. But what I want to point out is I want to make sure when you do this, as you set them up later, make sure that your display options are the same as the students so that you know what they see. So that's often one of the problems we have or people run into is they think they've set it up. You can see it as a professor, but your students don't see their grades because something wasn't selected for the students. If I deselect these, the students are not going to see their grade, even if I do, because this is the student display options. Um, and for now, I'm just going to select all these. And you can play with this because you can, again, depending on what you want them to see, you can look at your own, the org display options, and just adjust it and see what you prefer as a method of showing them their grades. This bottom piece, this final grade calculation, it's kind of useful, I suppose, but it's not as obvious as you would think. So it kind of gives them this little calculation tool. They can go in and click and see how their grades are calculated. But it's just not real obvious, even if that's checked. So it's kind of up to you. I don't think it hurts anything, but it's not super obvious in my opinion. They may not even know you've done that, even if you do select it. And next is just going to say, okay, this is what you did. Are you happy with this? And I'll say, yes, I am. So I'll click finish. So that gets me a quick setup. It's just a good way to start off in your gradebook. So once I'm done, it tells me all this stuff I can do, but I don't really need to worry about too many of these things. So I'm going to go to the top here. So now I have my options. So I'm going to bounce over to manage grades for a moment. So your manage grades area seems to be what often confuses people. So from this group, I think I heard earlier there's a couple of you use the percentage based. Do we have any points based, or what are y'all using for grading?
I use points based.
Points based? Okay. Was that Faith?
It is, yes.
Okay. Thought that was your way. Anybody else?
I use percentage.
Use percentage? Okay. And Angela, I believe you used percentage, right? I believe that's what you said in your thing. So you used.
I use
Okay.
percentage too.
Percentage too. Okay. So we'll look a little bit at both of them. Again, I'm in the percentage based right now. That's what I'm looking at. So, and because I'm percentage based, it's actually giving me this error because it needs to say 100%. So if I'm not reaching 100%, it's like you're not adding up here. Your math's not working for you, because with the percentage based, that's how that works. So I can fix that. So it's just looking at my weights. And right now, I only have gradebook items. So people often do get confused with the difference between a category and an item. So when I create something new, I can either do it from the gradebook or I can do it from one of the tools, from the Dropbox, from the quiz. If I click new, again, I have item or category. So let's create a category, and I'll just kind of walk through the difference between those, because it throws you when you start thinking about points based. About your weight. It tends to really throw you. So I'm going to create a category. So I'm going to create a category for quizzes, and then I'll add my quizzes to it here in a minute. And the short name I can add if I'd like to, but it's not necessary. If I do add a short name, that's how I'll see it under the enter grades area. And now I need a weight for my quizzes. So this is where I needed to go through beforehand and make sure I'm ready and I know what all my weights need and my whole schema set up for my syllabus. So I'm just going to make stuff up as I go along, just because it's what we usually do here, right? I'm just kidding. Hopefully we don't do that. So I'm going to say my quizzes are worth 40% of the final grade. So all the quizzes together are worth 40%. So that's their weight. There's some other options down here, and again, if you click the little button, the little question mark over here, gives you a little bit of an explanation of what that can do for you. And right now, I have some options for distribution. So by default, it set this manually assigned weight. I don't really want to do that, because as long as all my quizzes are worth the same amount, I would use this bottom one. I'm just going to say to distribute them evenly. They're all worth the same amount of points each, or they're all worth the same percentage each. So if I had one that's really heavy, I have one great big quiz and I'm putting it in the same thing, I can actually select this middle one and I can distribute them by points. So I can distribute that weight differently depending on how many points they're worth. But I'm going to go with the bottom one. So the reason I use this bottom one, if I can, is because if I really want to, I can actually easily drop the lowest score just by putting 1 or 2 or 8 or whatever you want to in that button. I really don't understand the point of this one unless you just don't like your students. You're going to drop their highest. I don't understand that. I don't know why, but I've never figured out a real good reason to use that. I don't know. If you'll have a good reason, I'd love to hear it, because I haven't found a good reason yet. It's like, I'm sorry, but you don't get that 100. It's not going to happen. But so I'm going to drop the lowest. I'll say I'm going to drop one of the lowest. And then under display options. So I already have the display options set, but I can override them for a certain topic if I want to. So I could actually take one item or one category and it could have a different display option. I don't really need to do that, but I could. So that's what that's about. So there's my one category. So I'm going to say save and close just for a minute so we can see what that just did. So now I have this 40 weight, but there's nothing in it. I have no items underneath it. So notice it's darker gray than the rest. So it's not real obvious that it's different except the color. So what I've seen happen often is people just make several categories and then they can't figure out how to assign things to the category because you can't. A category just holds an item, and your item is where your grades go. So now I need to adjust this. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly add these two quiz items to my quizzes category. So I can do that if I want. If I just select up here on the top, I'm going to select everything just because it's easier, and I'm going to say bulk edit. So that allows me to get a better idea where everything's at, what it's worth, the whole 9 yards. So here's my two that I've decided are quizzes. So over here, nothing's in a category yet. So I'm just going to select the category I just made for those two items. So again, once I create another category, I can add these to categories, or they don't have to be in a category. They can sit on their own, so that's no problem. So with that said, so let me come down and say save to that. So now you can tell they're inside a category. They're indented underneath that category. And notice what it did to that. I'm distributing them evenly. So this says 50 and 50. Because again, this throws people more than you'd think it would, but inside the category, every item needs to equal 100% of the category. So that's why they're off. It seems a little off. I've seen people oftentimes just keep those at 10 and 10 and 10 and 10, and then it adds up all kind of weird because their category has to equal 100, and then their other points have to equal 100 of the total. Did I just lose anybody with that, or does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. Perfect. Because that does tend to really throw people. For whatever reason, that tends to throw people. So, and because I'm automatically doing this, I didn't have to go in and tweak that. But again, I could, as one of my options, I could actually go in and weight one higher than the other, as long as these numbers reach 100%. So that it's 100% of my quizzes. So I'm still not right up here. My final calculator still needs 60% because I have 40, then I have two 10s up here. So let me go ahead and modify and add a couple other pieces. So just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to go ahead and write one. I don't have a lot of discussions in here yet, I don't think, but I certainly have nothing in my gradebook yet. I'm going to add another category. I'm going to say for discussions. And I'm going to say my discussions are worth 20%. And I'm going to go ahead and distribute them evenly. It's okay with me, but I don't want to drop the lowest. I'll say save and close. So that's going to start adding up. Now I'm at 80. And again, I can leave these out if I want to. But I may, if I'm only doing one writing assignment, there's really not a reason to put it in a category. So the only really reason to do that is either if you're going to drop a grade or you just want to organize them. So if you have multiple things you want to add to a category. So one benefit of that is maybe I have 10 quizzes in for this semester. And I go through the semester and they're all equally weighted. I go through the semester and we have a snow day or whatever, and I have to drop a quiz. If that quiz is part of the category, I can just go get rid of the quiz and it doesn't foul up my grading scheme. The grading scheme will automatically repair itself. Just go, that doesn't matter because it's part of that category. Or if I need to add something, I want to go in there, we're going to add a quiz, we can do that as well. Does that make sense to y'all?
It does.
I'd say smile and nod, but I can't see any of you. So the next piece I want to talk about is bonus items. So while I'm right in here, so we've had a few questions earlier. I know Jennifer and I were talking about she had some areas where she wanted to add a bonus item, and that can kind of throw you as well. So you can do it from here. You can also do some other stuff through the quizzes or drop boxes. So let's look at the bonus items with the gradebook first. So for my scenario, I'm going to say I want to give them bonus points based on maybe this is a hybrid class and it's for an in-class assignment. They walk in, they do something, maybe even for participation or for just showing up. So I can create a category, create an item in my gradebook and give them bonus at the end of the semester for that, or kind of whatever. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say new item. And I want this to be numeric, although I have lots of options. So if I want it to kind of calculate toward my grade, pretty much numeric is your friend. So you can add other things. You can add just text if you want to just make notes about your student. This kid really is, no, probably shouldn't do that. So then depending, you might want to hide that if you do that for the record. But I'm going to say numeric. So I'm going to say numeric. And now I have some options. So I'm going to say this is for attendance. So again, say I'm pretending I'm in a hybrid class and I want them to show up once in a while. So I'll give them just bonus points for attendance. Because if they really are that smart, they know they show up and they can still pass everything else, then hey, go you, you know? So here's my attendance category. And I won't put in a category because I don't need to. And with bonus points, it's a little trickier with categories anyway. So even if I put it in a category, there's not a way to make a bonus category. I wish there was actually, but I haven't talked them into that yet. So, but I'll just make a bonus item. And that's where I'm going to come down and figure out what weight that bonus item needs to be. Maybe I'll just give it a weight of 5. But what I really need to do is come down here and say bonus. So if I don't say bonus, this will count against them as not just for them, so they don't do it. But if I click that little select box here, bonus, it means this only is good for them, it can't count against them. So that's pretty much all I got to do with that. So again, I'll just come down here and say save and close. And I'll know it's a bonus item because it's going to give me this little star over here. So now you also notice right up here that 80%, this didn't change. So although I've added some weight here, it didn't modify the final grade calculation piece up here because it's just bonus item. It's just gravy. They don't have to do it, but if they want to, it just adds it towards the grade. Does that answer what you're looking for, Jennifer, about the bonus piece?
Yes.
Perfect. So that's a quick and easy way to do that. What I've seen people do sometimes is they'll click that bonus when it's part of something else. So maybe part of something is a bonus, or you do a quiz and you're trying to give them some bonus points, and you select, well, this has some bonus points, I need to click bonus, but you do not. If you click bonus, that entire grade is bonus. So that's something I'd just keep in mind. All right. So let me go ahead and finish up getting mine to 100% because I know at least Jennifer told me, if not, some others have the same problem. You really don't like this little red note up here telling you this is wrong. You don't do math. So we're going to add something here real quick. So I'm going to say new item, and I'll just add a couple more items. All right. So I'm going to say midterm. And I'll do midterm will be, I won't put it in a category, though I could. Maybe ahead of my midterm and final, they weighted the same. I could just put exams, perhaps, as a category. And I can make that category right here. I don't have it yet, but maybe I can just go ahead and I'll say new category, and I'll say exams. And I'm going to say the overall weight for these is going to be 20. I'm not going to drop one of those. That sounds crazy. And I can even manually assign it. So perhaps the final is worth a little bit more than the midterm if you want to do that. So I can say manually assign. I'll say save. The points matters, but not necessarily. So, I mean, the points just are basically the percentage inside of the percentage, if that it wasn't confusing enough already. But the points could be a million if you wanted to. The points... it's just for that particular item. So I'm just going to say 100 points. Maybe each one of my exams will be worth 50 points or whatever. So, and I'm going to come down here and save and close. So exam sums 10%, that's 100%. So I have an empty category. So my exams category is worth 20, but I still need to make some things to go inside of that. So I'm going to say new item, and make my midterm. Oops. Maybe if I could use all my fingers. And I'm going to add that to my exams. So I can do that right here as I'm creating it. Come down here and say save and new, because I'm just going to make another one. But before I do that, because I've manually, if I told that I wanted to manually do this, otherwise when I selected the category, notice if I change the category, I can't change the weight because this one's automatically doing it. But in my exams category, I choose the weight.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I need to come in and specify. So again, it has to equal 100 over the whole thing. So I can say maybe the midterm is going to be 40% of this weight, and my final 60. And I'm going to say save and new. Oops, midterm exam. Otherwise, it thinks it's the midterm grade, and that is different. So I'm going to say midterm exam because there's two items in your gradebook that you can't really get rid of. One is the midterm, one is the final grade. Even if you don't use them, you have to be the other kind of part of the system that you can't get rid of. I'll say final exam, and again I'll put it under there. Add my points, and I'll say 60. Save and close. Exam sums. Oops, I got carried away, didn't I? Oh, I already had an exam in my. Yeah, never mind. I already had an exam in there, so I can get rid of the other exam. I just made one earlier and didn't mean to. So let me get rid of that exam real quick. So here's how to get rid of an exam. So first, let's point out a couple things. So notice all of my items in my gradebook, they do not currently have an association. So under association, it's empty. Mm-hmm. So which means I haven't tied them to something over here. I haven't tied them to a Dropbox or to a quiz. So that either means I'm doing that with a paper quiz, or I just simply haven't associated them yet. So because I haven't associated it yet, I could go and just delete pretty much anything in here. But once I associate it, I have to break that association before I can delete it. So to go ahead and delete, say, this midterm, I'm just going to click on More Actions up here. I'm going to click Delete. So now I have the option. Notice I could just say select. I can delete everything. But if something's associated, it won't allow me to click it. I can't actually select it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. So I'm going to say I want to delete this midterm. I'm going to say delete. I thought I couldn't make that because of this final pieces, but yeah, sorry. So there we go. So I've deleted that now. So another possibility is if I just deleted this and then I said, oh crap, I just deleted the wrong one. Moment of panic, right? Shouldn't have to. So under More Actions, I'm going to go to Event Log, and I can actually see that I've just deleted my midterm. And I can come in here and just restore it. So it's not a major issue. So I can say, oh wait, I got that. I can restore it, put it right back out. So kind of slick. So I don't need to do that, so I'm going to go back to Manage Grades. So there's that. So let's go ahead and take a look at some quizzes and how I would associate those quizzes to this. So first, I can certainly create my grade items from, say, quizzes, or I can create them in the gradebook, depending on what I want to do. So I'm going to bounce up here to quizzes. I think I have a couple that I built in here, just I haven't associated any of them right now. So I have all these quizzes in here, but none of these are associated to my gradebook. Again, this is just a sandbox course, so I've kind of been playing it here before. So I can either come to a pre-existing quiz and associate it, or I can, of course, do that as I create a quiz. So in order to do that, I'm going to go with this new one down here. So I'm going to click on my quiz. So it's going to open it up so I can basically edit it. So over here under Assessment, this is where I can come and associate it. So right here I have a grade item, and it's not associated. So all I got to do is select whatever this should be associated to. So again, if this is just a quiz, I'm going to say my new one. Maybe this needs to be for quiz 1. Normally I'd probably have the same name for that. So I make quiz 1 to quiz 1 in my gradebook so it's not confusing. So the other two pieces that are really important here that's not set by default are these two check marks. So under the assessment part, not in your Dropbox, Dropbox is a little bit different, but under assessment, this allow attempt to be set as graded immediately, it's not selected by default, and I think it should be, but it's just not. So I suggest selecting that, so that what it means is as soon as your student's done and they click submit and their set test is graded, they can see their grade. It goes right to the grade book. As long as it's all multiple choice or something that the system can grade. If you're using paragraph type questions that you have to grade manually, then obviously that's not quite the same. And then this other piece down here, allow automatic export to grades. So these two kind of need to be set almost all the time. You may have situations where you don't do that, but these can come in really handy. Otherwise, you'll have students saying, I don't see my grade. I took my quiz. I can't find my grade because it's not automatically pushing it to the grade book. So how this, check those two. So that's really all I need to do from the assessment side if I want to associate one. So I also have options down here with assessment. It's not really part of the grade piece, but I can actually tell it what I want to grade. If I'm allowing multiple attempts in a quiz, which I have the option to do, I could let them take 1,000,000 if I want to. And then I can say, well, I'm only going to give them the highest, or I can have them average their attempts, or just their first or last. I can choose kind of what I want. So maybe I'm going to give them 2 attempts and they can have the average. So that's not a bad option. It just depends what you're trying to get out of this. And then that's what will go toward the gradebook. So that's how I kind of associate that. So I'm going to say save and close. And I do the same thing if I just create a new quiz, exactly the same settings that we just seen. So does that lose anybody just yet?
No, I'm good.
Awesome. So let's hop over to Dropbox for a sec. It's pretty much the same, but we'll just get it. It's a little different, but not a lot. So again, I already have one. So my writing assignment I already have, and I have a writing assignment, I believe, in my gradebook. So I'm going to go ahead and just select it. When I select writing assignment, it's actually looking to grade, I'm sorry, not writing assignment, in my Dropbox. When I select a particular folder, it opens it up like I'm going to grade it. I'm going to hide the search options here just so it's not. And I don't have any students in here, so no one submitted anything. Again, this is just a pretend class, my sandbox class. But I want to actually edit it, so I'm going to click Edit Folder. Now I can go in and kind of modify some of those things. Again, I have a grade item listed here, but there's nothing in it. But I've already created my grade item in my gradebook, so I can just select it. However, I could easily have done the same thing without doing that from the gradebook. I can actually just build these as I build my assignments, quizzes, or grades, or Dropboxes. So by just clicking New Grade Item. So another piece that sometimes throws people is the categories here, because I have a category underneath my other options. So I'm in the Dropbox, and I have a category option, which I don't really need. You may want to if you have a whole bunch of something, perhaps in your discussions, or maybe you just have a lot of assignments and you want to categorize them for your own good, or just so your students have an understanding where they kind of belong in the semester. You can certainly do that. But this category is different than the category to see here. So if I was to say new grade item, excuse me, I have the options for categories here too. And again, that's not the same thing. So, but I already have a grade for this, so I don't need to make that. But I could easily just create my grade item right here and be done with it. It'll automatically put it in my grade book, and I can put it in the category. The one difference is if I don't have a category already made, I can't create the gradebook category from here, although I can do that from the gradebook. So, piece of cake, right? So the other setting that I want to point out, and by default this is usually set okay, but you may want a gradebook item to be hidden from your students. So perhaps you, or I don't know, for whatever reason you created one, you want to wait and show them all the same times. One reason I've heard of people doing this is they want to go through and grade, they're manually grading a paper, and they want to wait until they're done grading before the students see their grades. So Bob's not calling Jenny, hey, I gotta, before everything's done. So you can actually just come in and hide the grade item, and you can do this from the gradebook as well. Just go into that particular gradebook, and I'll show you that. And you can hide a grade item from the student until you're all done. Then you can come back and say show it, and you can show it. Or again, this piece is actually kind of new. So you could actually give a date range for when it's visible, which is kind of slick. So you could, I'm going to be done grading by the whatever date, and you could just put that's the start date. They can see their grade. So again, that's kind of a new piece they've added on recently. So does the whole association pieces make sense to y'all? Yes, no, maybe? I'd throw chocolate if I could reach all you guys, but y'all too far away.
Yes, it makes sense.
Awesome. Okay. So again, now I've committed, I already associated this. I'm just going to save and close my Dropbox. So now if I go back to my grades, it's going to show me that I have some associations. So nope, Wendy's not doing too good here. So I'm on enter grades, and I'll show you another piece that's worth looking at as well. So I'm going to click back on manage grades, and now it shows the ones I've associated. I mean, this little kind of a circle here, it shows it's associated to that writing assignment. For quiz 1. So it tells me what it's associated to. And if I try to delete these now, if I go back to my delete option, come on, wait for it. Some of these are now grayed out. I can't actually select them. So it's kind of a good thing. So I can't accidentally delete something and have to go back and play with it again and try to get fixed. So it's trying to save me from myself, which is probably a good thing for me. So there's that piece. So now I have some stuff associated. The little red bar appears gone. All is well with the world. And now I can come in and grade. So as far as just the organizing piece, I think we covered that pretty well. But before I move on to kind of the undergrades area, I'd love to hear. Do you want to hear anything else about that? Or pieces of this that you still not sure about, or any questions I haven't answered that you know of?
I think my question is, and this kind of goes back to the beginning where you started with the setup wizard.
Okay.
That there's a box that you. No. The question is, can you run the setup wizard after you've already created your assignments in your gradebook?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
So I can actually do it now, or you don't need to, but you can. So maybe now I made all these and I want to change something, so I could walk through the wizard, but I could also just click settings. So if I click settings right here, most of what I did in the wizard is under the settings area.
Oh, smart. Okay.
So now I have this personal display options, and this is where you want to make sure your personal and your org unit, again, it's funny the way they word things, match. So something I'll point out here, there's actually one known issue. They just kind of broke this recently, and they're trying to fix it. So I don't have my username selected, but even if I did, you couldn't see it. So I'll show what that means in a minute. And it's not usually a big deal, but it's helpful if you have like 2 Jennifer Egans in your class, right? Or whatever. So you might want to come in and select that so you can know which student you're looking at if you have 2 matching students. Okay. But right now that's broken and they're fixing it, so that just barely happened. But they are working on a repair for that. But you can select these other items and hopefully they'll show up. But right now the username, I'm not sure the email does either, but I know the org ID does. I'm not sure where that shows up. I'll show what I mean by that. So because I'm looking at this personal, for me, I'm going to select each of these for a minute just so I can see what they all do. And then you can kind of play with it and see what you like, and then you can modify those to make them happy, and then make sure the org unit is the same way. So your class sees what you see. And there's some other options down here. So some of these are pretty basic. They can repeat that either adjusted or final calculated item. And then the default area is normally set to manage, but once you have your gradebook set up, I like to change that to enter so it doesn't have to sit and click enter grades until I come to my gradebook. Right. It automatically goes there, so you can change that. And I'm going to save this screen, and I'll move to the next screen. And right now I've selected all these as well, but they could be different than this. So you don't want that, in my opinion, but they don't automatically kind of match. You have to make sure and specify. And this piece, didn't we talk about that already? I think we talked about this already. Okay. So you can display that, how it's used, but it's not very obvious. And then I can also go to calculation options, and I can even change, maybe I've decided I want to go to points based, I can do that. Now, because I've already set it up with weighted, I guess it wouldn't matter if my whole points is 100, it'd be fine. But if I had this was set to point system, I had 200 points possible in my class, and I went to weighted, I have to go back and modify everything to kind of make it work. So you may not want to do that once you're set up. At least think about it real hard before you do that, because you might have to change a few things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can modify all of those things from here.
Perfect.
Then I'm going to say save, and I'll say close. Oops. Yes, I want to save. And then I got to close that screen. So, but yeah, no problem. You can easily get to all those from there.
Awesome. Thank
I
you.
have a question.
All right, shoot.
I saw that you set up attendance as a bonus. What if you have attendance as a penalty? Is there a way to automatically calculate that into the final grade?
Well, you just wouldn't set up as a bonus. So if it's a penalty, not necessarily. You can't have something that's only against them and not for them. But you could make it so it's not a bonus item, so that it counts for or against them. But there's not a way to say this only counts against you. Does that make sense? Is that what you're asking?
I think so. So if they miss more than a certain number amount, there's a total number of points subtracted from the final grade.
I see.
So I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
If they miss, if it's from their final grade, I would probably just not make it bonus. So basically, their attendance is worth 10% of the grade or whatever that is, and then you may have to go back and manually make that adjustment at the end of the semester. But if it's worth a certain amount, and if they don't do it, they don't get those points, it wouldn't necessarily be a penalty, just wouldn't be bonus. And then you'd have to go in and kind of look at that. There's some other ways to kind of track attendance, but again, depending on the kind of class you're in. If you're using this as just a resource in a fully face-to-face class, that may come in more to play than it would in a fully online or even a hybrid class. So, yeah.
So, Stacey, I want to just clarify what you're asking. So, if you have students miss a certain number of classes, you deduct points from them. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Got ya. Because I do the same thing, and I think that was a good question because, I manually keep up with my attendance, and then at the end of the semester, I manually count every absence that they had. And I'm assuming is that how you do it?
Yeah, I use the attendance tracker that's under the grades thing here.
Yeah.
But I have to go through, like I said, and add it up, and then go through and manually subtract it. And I was thinking that with this technology, there has to be an easier way.
Right.
You would think, right? I've actually been in meetings where that was been discussed. So that's a little deeper conversation than just what the tool can do.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in conversations where people are kind of arguing and debating whether that's a good idea or not, and the whole idea of kind of the best method of getting your students to show up to class. But that's not for me to go into. But I don't really know, and I understand what you're saying. I think it would be the same. I guess it depends on if you're in a weighted system. If everything else is worth 100, but you'll deduct if they don't get anything for showing up, they only get kind of taken away for not showing up. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, I guess that's a way to phrase it. Although I like to think of it as when they show up, they get the benefit of my knowledge.
That's right.
But if they really get the benefit of your knowledge, they would prove it with all the stuff they get right in your class, right?
Right. Well,
So-
that's true. That's true too. But then there's also something to be said for the fact that we do a lot of interactive things in class, and so
Right.
I want them to have the benefit of that.
I guess what I've seen a lot of people do instead of that is just those things done in class. They either just have a little heavier, or if they miss those class items, they're graded. So they miss out on that, and it's kind of a similar idea, but not. I know it's not what you're trying to do, but
Mm-hmm.
I have a class of 86, and so I don't have that luxury as far as so much interaction we have is limited. I am also not a math guru, but what I end up doing is I tell them, okay, you've got 3 freebies. I don't ask any questions,
Mm-hmm.
no questions asked. You get those free ones. If anything over 3 absences with no doctor's excuse, no nothing, I start taking points off. And so what I basically do is I just divide the number of class meetings that we have, subtract 3, and then it's very, very primitive, let me tell you. But but I'm adding, basically what I'm doing is I'm adding points to this grade, and I have it count 10%, and I'm adding points up. So for every class you come, basically you get XYZ number of points, and you're not however high you get, then great for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of work for me. In fact, I have to enter all this, every single time for all these 86 people. But to me, it's that important, because otherwise I don't need to be there, and nobody else does either. So the ones that come to class every single time, then they need to get extra. They should get that credit for having shown up every single time. That's just me.
Yeah. That's a tricky one.
It would be lovely if D2L could come up with some answer for this, though. It would be truly. It would save hours, seriously. But it sounds like between Stacy and me, we're spending hours doing this.
Yeah, it sounds that way. Or we could rethink the way we grade.
This is true.
Sorry, I can say that because I'm far enough away you can't throw things at me. So.
Well, no, I mean, do other people? I mean, like you guys all, and I'm sort of new to this. I've been doing this a year. Does everybody count for attendance, or does everybody just say, well, if you don't show up, then it's too bad, so sad, and just you probably won't make as good grade?
I did not have an attendance policy until this year. Because I always told my students, you're an adult. You know what you have to do. You know where you need to be. You know what needs to be done in your life. I don't. So there's no attendance policy. And I found that students didn't come to class, and their grades showed it. Mm-hmm. So to kind of counteract that, this year I started a policy where I allow them 4 absences, no questions asked. I don't need anything from you. You don't have to explain it. And then every absence after 4 absences, I deduct 5 points per each absence, unless they have some documented, excuse for being absent. And that has really helped. My students are not absent near as much as they were when I did not have anything in place.
So you take it off of their participation grade?
I take it off their because I do a point system. So at the end of the semester, I go through and I count up how many they have. Let's say they're absent 6 times, they lose 10 points from their final point value.
Oh, that sounds like it hurts.
It does, but they show up.
Does this help their grades or hurt their grades? It
helps.
Oh,
absolutely.
Does it help their grade?
Because they come, they participate, they contribute, and it's been very, very different this time around.
That's exactly my policy. Exactly what you just. It's exactly what I do. Mm-hmm. And I know some people criticize me because it is stiff, but it works.
So here's an option, maybe. So I'm going to throw this out as a possible suggestion, because I'm not really sure. I'm on the train just yet, but I understand what you're saying. So I'm going to say a new item, and I'm going to create a calculated item, because you can create an item that's basically there just so it doesn't affect the grade, but it'll do your math for you. So I haven't done this before, so I'm shooting off the seat of my pants here, so forgive me if it doesn't work. But I think it will. So I can say calculation for missed days or whatever. Calc for missed attendance, for missed class. Now I can come in and actually create a scheme based on that. So I wonder if I could do, again, I'm shooting off seat of my pants, so what I want to do is add an actual calculation for this. Let's see if the best way to do this would be here or not. Actually, it might not be a calculation. It may be a formula. Let me try not this item. Let me try one other a different type. Hang on. Let me try another kind instead. So new item and a formula, not calculated but formula. So formula allows me to do that, not calculated. Sorry. So let's try it that way. So I'm going to say formula, and now I can come and edit this formula. I can actually create a formula based on whatever I want. So just like an Excel formula, although this is not near as easy to use. But I could, I believe, just deduct something, even from their final, from whatever grade I wanted to. I believe I could come in here and say, deduct points. If I created an item in here, a grade item, I could probably have it. I'll have to play with this to make sure it works right, but I believe I could create an item in my gradebook and then create a a formula item that used that and subtracted whatever was in that.
Hmm.
It was a minus, but I have to play with it. I'm not positive that'll work. But it may be some options you can do with formula. Formula doesn't allow you to do things that normally the system's not built for.
Mhm.
So there may be some options there.
Stacy, have you tried exporting your attendance registers to Excel?
Actually, that's the only way that I can easily count up their absences.
Exactly. I was going to say, I figured that out early on. I thought, this is a nightmare the first year and
Yeah.
the first semester. I thought, I can't do this. And then I figured out about exporting, and that saved me.
So that's
Yeah.
something we've actually turned into the company. So we're trying to get them to figure out a way, because I believe we're talking about is right up here you have attendance. And if you haven't used attendance, I'm going to open a new window here.
Mhm.
You can create a register for all your students. But right now it's not associated and it doesn't tie to your gradebook. We have put in requests with the company to try to figure out a way to associate the register or the attendance tool to the gradebook itself, so it'll automatically feed the gradebook. But
Mhm.
as of yet, that's not an option. But we are still working on this with the company, trying to get them to do that. I haven't heard whether or not they've really liked the idea, but we are pushing that to see if that's an option.
Is there a way to alert the students that when they get a certain number of absences, they get some sort of alert?
Probably. I would have to again have to play with that to see the best way to do that. But there are some kind of tools in the system. We're kind of getting out of the grade part of it, but under edit course, there's something called intelligent agents. Sometimes they're just kind of smart cops. Really, they're not really intelligent agents. They're a little bit intelligent, but you can do some interesting stuff with this. So based on different things, I haven't tried it against the attendance tool, but you may be able to. So you can enable an agent that says if you haven't done certain things, it'll email the student. I'd have to play with it and see if it could be associated to the registry. I don't know for sure if it can, but that's a possible piece in this tool, and that would automatically do it. You can create kind of a trigger that if something happens, then they get an email.
Mhm.
But again, I haven't tested that with the attendance tool, so I'm not positive. But if so, it'd be in here. You can certainly do that with different pieces of their grade items. So if they get a really poor grade or a great grade, you can have it automatically send them either a kudos email, kind of like good job, or what were you thinking kind of email. But so there are some cool options with this intelligent agent tool. But again, I'm not positive it works directly with that attendance tool. But that's where I would look if I was going to play with it. Again, I haven't played with that particular thing, but yeah. Any other questions, thoughts? Make sure that I covered all this stuff.
No, not right now. Thank you.
Okay. But yeah, there's some neat stuff you can do. And there's a lot of tools that we oftentimes, our department, we don't really talk about because sometimes they get a little deeper. It's one of those you got to wear your boots to get in there because it gets pretty deep and it can be a little complex. And oftentimes, the more complex doesn't necessarily make it better. So we're trying to keep it a little simpler. But there's a lot of stuff that you can do inside of Course 10. And normally things work pretty well. Granted, there's often here and there's things that go wrong, but for the most part, I think things work pretty well inside of here.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to make sure I've read all of Angela's been over here typing away. Just to remember to, yep. Okay. But I think we've covered pretty much all I wanted to go through. As long as y'all are happy and I've answered all your questions, I think we've covered pretty well the different options in Gradebook and how to associate things. Hopefully you took something from this.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Y'all are very welcome.
Thank you.
You bet. You bet.
Thanks so much, David.
So with all that, I'm going to go ahead and stop this lovely broadcast, and I may share it even with other people afterwards.